Greetings, good people of the internet. I am Eric Grooms, the Film Score Fanatic, here with a review of Chapter 5 of The Mandalorian, titled The Gunslinger. This episode, I believe, was directed by Dave Filoni again. And speaking of that, I think he may have made a cameo. I could totally be wrong, but we'll get to that in a second. I just wanted to start off right off the top. So I'm going to talk about the episode. At this point, it's really difficult to talk about any details without spoiling the episode. So obviously, if you're watching this, you've been watching the show, you've seen the episode, hopefully. If you haven't, go and watch it. And we're going to talk about the episode here. So let's just get that out of the way. I am going to get heavier with spoilers towards the end. I'll try and it'll be kind of light spoilers for the beginning of this discussion. But we'll get heavy into the speculation for the future and what certain big spoilers for the episode might mean. Got that out of the way. So let's just get into it and start talking about the episode. We start off with a very clear reference to Boba Fett. How do I word this? You can be a Star Wars fan and maybe not recognize the reference. I think it may be kind of a deeper reference, but I recognized it right off the bat. Here's an example of it.
Hand over the child, Mando. I might let you live.
Boba Fett has said in the past, and I can't recall if he says it in the films, but it must have been in some expanded thing, because it's ended up being in video games and whatnot. But Boba Fett has said in the past, I might let you live, and I'm doing the more modern Kiwi accent, because that's what I've heard the most on the video game that I play.
If you triple the prize, I might let you live.
That's only the first of many references. This episode's heavy on references, things that you'd recognize, because we finally visit a familiar location in the Star Wars universe. So far in the first half of this series, we've seen new locations, most of the time not really even getting a name or anything for those places. Which, speaking of that, in this episode we get a name for the base planet that we've seen the most of, where Mando has been doing his deals with the guild and hanging out with the covert, I think is what they call, where the other Mandalorians have been hiding out. In this episode, they call it Navarro, I believe. I don't know if that's already been mentioned before, but I feel like I hadn't heard it mentioned, but I'm sure there's other folks that are even deeper into all the details that already knew what it was called. But anyway. We finally visit a familiar place, and that's Tatooine, and we know that right off the bat when he's landing in Mos Eisley. But real quick, one more thing I wanted to say about the opening scene. Pretty badass little exchange between Mandalorian and his current bounty hunter foe at the moment, and the bounty hunter, this guy apparently has no original material, because first he says a Boba Fett line, and then he says the Mandalorian's line, which is I can take you in warm or I can take you in cold. And then the Mandalorian does some cool stuff and takes him down. He says, "That's my line." I like that a lot. That was a pretty good one. But anyway, back to the planet. We're on Tatooine for pretty much the entirety of this episode. And like I said, there's a ton of references, which I obviously there have been references to Star Wars universe type stuff throughout this series, but this episode in particular had a lot of big references, I think, because they were all characteristic of that planet, which we've seen a lot in the Star Wars universe. So, aside from the Mos Eisley reference, and there's pit droids, which we saw in episode 1, and dewbacks and Tusken Raiders and banthas, and he even goes to, it seems, the same exact cantina that we saw in A New Hope, which, on that note, what happened to the old cantina owner? Because he's gone. Not only are things under different ownership, it's being run by droids, it looks like. There's droids tending the bar, which is a huge turnaround, because I'm pretty sure that guy didn't like droids. So, interesting little detail. It brought a smile to my face, just for the fact of the complete flip-flop of the situation in Tatooine, and that's in that place. So I'm wondering what happened on Tatooine in the time since the Empire fell, because we see some pretty devastating imagery. Some carnage appears to have occurred, and some stormtroopers did not win in whatever fight occurred. So is that just like standard lawlessness in this region of space, or is that a greater indication of like an uprising on Tatooine to kick out the remnants of the Empire? Pretty violent. It looks like something bad happened. Was that Rebel Alliance stuff, or was it just offshoots of that, people that have had enough? I don't know. It certainly looks cool and makes for an interesting trailer, as we saw with all the imagery that was shared before the show started. Perhaps we'll get some more details at some point about what has happened in the history since in the 5 years since the Empire fell. What else? We had some great cameos in this episode. I've been loving the cameos. That's been one of the most interesting things, I think, in this series so far. The little people that are popping up, and in almost every case, it just brings a smile to my face. It doesn't take me out of the episode, because a lot of times if you have like stunt cameos, it can really take you out of it. But in this episode, when we kind of meet the first character, aside from his cold open foe, we meet a woman, and I immediately thought, is that Amy Sedaris? I couldn't quite tell. She's kind of a chameleon in some ways. Her appearance is, she does a good job of like just slightly changing things for a character. But yeah, it was definitely her. And then we meet some young buck in the cantina, played by apparently Jake Cannavale. I didn't know who he was, but I looked him up just because that name is, pretty unique, Cannavale. And sure enough, he is Bobby Cannavale's son, and also Sidney Lumet's grandson, because Bobby Cannavale is married to Ginny Lumet. I think it was Ginny, who is the daughter of Sidney Lumet, a very big name in Hollywood history. I believe five Academy Awards, 4 of them for directing. But anyway, Jake's character was like a young buck bounty hunter who's trying to make his way in the guild. And from the introduction of his character, and basically from then on throughout the episode, to me it kind of felt a little bit like one of the animated series episodes. It's hard to pinpoint it, but the simple explanation that I could come up with was that this character, felt so youthful and hip and cool.
For kids.
Which is, very often the case with the animated series. There's like maybe a couple of, adult type characters and then a bunch of youthful characters. And, which is by design, because the animated shows are made for younger audiences generally.
For kids.
So, I don't know, they're gonna have youthful characters, but it's just the way the attitude was portrayed. I don't know. It kind of seemed a little less adult than I've gotten used to with this series. With the subject matter and the violence and whatnot. But that's just a small gripe, not a huge deal. But I did have just another bit of a gripe from a technical filmmaking standpoint, and I noticed it, I think, twice in this episode, and I've noticed it several times previously in other episodes, and that's the ADR on this show. ADR has a couple different definitions. It's the same thing, but that means additional dialogue replacement or automated dialogue recording. Basically what that is when you get coverage of a scene on film, on set, on the day, and maybe the sound didn't record perfectly, there was wind machines going, or whatever. You want to change the line slightly, it doesn't quite fit what you were trying to do when you finally cut the scene together, and so you do recording in a studio space after the fact. And where this comes into play a lot, that it becomes noticeable, is when and you may have noticed this before in films that you've watched, where somebody is saying something and they've got like a shot over the shoulder, so the camera's like looking over the shoulder at the back of their neck and their jaw, and you can see that their mouth is moving a certain way, but it doesn't match the words that you're hearing, or their mouth is not even moving at all. Sorry, I just hit my mic. Or their mouth isn't even moving at all, and they're saying something. There were 2 times in this episode that a character was either saying something and they, like what was shown on the screen, they weren't even talking at all. So again, that's a little gripe, but it does annoy me a little bit. Those are the kind of things that make me think that they're not putting in as much effort as you think into the editing. I know that when I know that with like films and television and stuff like that, they're in the editing bay for a long time. They're in the editing process for a long time. So sometimes you just see stuff for so long that you just can't catch everything. I heard that there was a boom mic in episode 4 last week. I didn't see it. I didn't go back to try and find it or anything like that. I don't care. I didn't notice it, and I watched it like three times. So that to me means that it wasn't an issue wasn't that big of an issue. But little mistakes like that happen. But the ADR thing is starting to bug me. If I start seeing it more and more, that's going to be a little concerning. I digress. Didn't really mean to talk about that long, but I had a note here to say something about it. I noted that Dave Filoni was the director of the episode. There's a scene, and I'll show you a little clip of it, of a dead bounty hunter that gets rolled over. And I can't tell, but I was like, I bet that's Dave Filoni. He's the director of the episode, and he's I don't know if he's ever been in it. I think he's been a cameo in like one of the films, like Rogue One or something like that. But like he's on set, slap a costume on, and do this one thing. I think that might have been him, but not a big deal. But I guess the major gripe that I had for this episode, and I'm annoyed at myself that I have so many gripes. Maybe it's the mindset that I'm in right now. But the Mandalorian so far in this series has had a pretty cool weapon in his arsenal. And we've seen it in action doing some pretty freaking awesome things. And it conspicuously was not around in this episode. Which, to me, is an indication that it was conveniently left out. The Mandalorian got himself involved in a situation where he knew he was going to be going up against a formidable foe, and he forgot his best weapon. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But I guess maybe he just wanted a challenge or something. But the reality is, for convenient plot's sake, it was easier to do what they wanted to do in the episode if he didn't have that. Because, and here we got some spoilers, so if you didn't see any of this episode, you're going to get a little spoiled here. They end up going up against a sniper, a character who has a sniper rifle. Too bad the Mandalorian didn't have his sniper rifle with a scope that he could have been counteracting the enemy with. And so that's why I believe it was conveniently left out for just the reason that he wouldn't be able to, there's a whole scene where they have to do a certain action, and it's a fun, cool action scene, but it would have been unnecessary if he had his rifle that he always has. So, to be fair, he did hand the rifle to Cara Dune during the big action scene in the last episode, but I'm pretty sure he got it back after that action scene was over, and he took it with him. But those kinds of things in writing really rub me the wrong way, because we've literally seen him with this rifle in every situation so far in this series, and then it's conveniently gone when it works to help whatever scene they wanted to set up, which to me is a lazy move. You can tell I'm a little bit miffed at this episode. Not because there weren't fun scenes and fun moments and good acting. Like the cameos I thought were great. But I'm starting to get a little annoyed at the weekly adventure format that we've been going through so far, especially for the last 2 or 3 episodes. I want to put a pin in that because I want to go into like deep speculation and spoilers here in a second. But I did want to say real quickly that Ming-Na Wen appears in this episode, and she did an excellent job. She's a fine actor. She's so good. And more spoiler stuff. She gets shot. I hope that she's not dead. Maybe we see her again. The indication was that she probably was dead, which is disappointing because it's like you've got another great, interesting character and a good actor that could do some cool stuff in the future, and you kill her right off the bat. We've had a couple of those, I feel like, in this series so far. Like, people come on for literally 10 minutes of screen time, maybe less, and then they're gone, especially since every episode is between 30 and 40 minutes long. So I just wanted to say that about Ming-Na before moving on to the big spoilers and speculation, which we're going to get into right now. The main thing about the spoilers and speculation is getting back to what I was saying a second ago about the fact that we're getting, it seems like, a lot of episodes that are pretty light on really interesting developments. Each episode, I will say, each of the last 3 episodes, they've all had, there has been a purpose, there has been a moment, some kind of character development to add to the Mandalorian story, and put another puzzle piece in the overall picture of who he is and what makes him who he is, and how that's gonna, whatever thing is happening is gonna affect the future of this storyline. I get that, but it feels like there's one tiny puzzle piece in each of the last 3 episodes or so. Well, I shouldn't say that, the last 2 episodes. And this one felt like that as well. It was like, oh, okay, he helped a young guy get a bounty, and that was kind of it. We just stopped at this place because he needed his ship to be fixed. Okay, yeah, it's a pretty light episode if that's all there is. And so when it got to the end of that storyline and he gets in his ship and starts to fly off, and it's like a pretty standard, like he's gonna fly into space and then it'll go to black, and it does actually go to black. I literally thought to myself in that moment, if that's it, I'm like, they're really starting to lose my faith that this is gonna have a really substantial story to hold out for only 8 episodes that are 30 to 40 minutes long. I just feel like I had more faith in Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni to have more meat on the bone. The main reason that I feel this way is because I feel like we haven't even met the big bad. We've met the client, Werner Herzog, and we saw him in 2 episodes, and he was awesome. I feel like we might never see him again. His part has been played out, it seems. I hope he comes back. But we have now gone 5 out of 8 episodes, and I don't feel like we've met who would be the main antagonist for our hero. We've seen the Mandalorian and the Asset, those two in every single episode. So we've got like two major recurring characters, and then there's been like 4 or 5 other characters that have shown up in multiple episodes. But that's it. No major major antagonist, in my opinion. Like there's gray characters that he's had to contend with in a couple situations. But we haven't met the main. Who's his main foe? When is it going to stop being, oh, this week he has to fight this bounty hunter, who's a cool looking character that is a problem for this episode, and then we never see them again. The reason I say all this is a preamble for the fact that I feel like we may have seen somebody at the very end that might be a special character in some way or another. A dark figure walks up to the, I guess, presumably corpse of Ming-Na Wen's character, and it's a tease. We don't actually find out who this person is. My initial reaction when I saw them walking up was, oh, thank God! Is this finally Moff Gideon, Giancarlo Esposito's character that we've been waiting for? And I know that he's involved in some interesting action at some point. He's got a whole squad of death troopers with him, and we've seen in a trailer where he's flying a TIE fighter. So that was my initial reaction, like, are we finally gonna meet this guy maybe in the next episode? But then something clicked in my mind, and I'm sure I'm not the first person on the internet to say this. I have a day job, so I worked all day today, and then I came home and I watched the episode twice, and then I did a bunch of prep work for my video, and now I'm finally recording it. But I swear to you, I haven't watched or read anyone else's reactions to the episode. So this is all a preamble for, it occurred to me because there was a sound effect that reminded me of somebody. Somebody who we saw a lot of on Tatooine. Somebody who, as far as we know, met his demise on Tatooine. And, this is a pretty earth-shattering speculation if it ends up being true. And like I said, I'm sure I'm not the only person who came to this conclusion as a possibility. And I'm not saying that it is certainly what I think it is. I think there's been a lot of clues set forward. So I will stop rambling now. Cut to the chase, finally. Was that Boba Fett that walked up to Ming-Na Wen at the end? He was on Tatooine. That has been his main location in most of his appearances in canon. And, last we saw, he fell into a not so great little pit. So yeah, there's a lot of indication there that maybe that might have been him. And I wonder if we're gonna go ahead and start making a story out of this, as Star Wars fans are known to do. Did he witness somebody in Mandalorian armor having an interaction with Ming-Na Wen? And maybe he's been laying low since things went poorly for him, in Return of the Jedi. But seeing a Mandalorian armored individual in his territory, maybe that reawakens something and he's going to get back in the action. That'd be pretty fun, I will say. I've never really been a big fan of the idea that they were considering doing a Boba Fett story at some point. Just because I've always been afraid that they would mess up the character or something, diminish what we know of him. Not that there's much to diminish. He is a really bad bounty hunter. But Dave, if there's anybody that I trust to handle bringing that character back in an interesting way, in a reverent way, that it would be Dave Filoni. So could get interesting. That'd be pretty cool if we got all the Mandalorians, and then we've got like the notoriously well-known not Mandalorian character that has gone around wearing Mandalorian armor. And, if we do see them all together in some form or fashion, do the Mandalorians have any disrespect for certain Boba Fett for parading around in their traditional Mandalorian armor while not actually being a Mandalorian? And, do they take umbrage to the fact that he did kind of a terrible job as a bounty hunter while kind of representing their culture in some way? So, yeah. That's a huge, it could just be they're just messing with us. I could even see that just being a red herring. Like, they show us this character, this dark character that we don't see any details from, and then that's it. We don't hear anything else about that character until, halfway through season 2 or something like that. I could totally see them doing something like that. But with that kind of clue being tossed out for us to sniff, I hope that something comes to fruition sooner rather than later. That being said, my overall impression of this episode, you've got some good parts. That opening fight scene in space was cool. I wish I could have gotten some more detailed imagery. Like that enemy ship, I kind of wanted to see how, like, exactly what it looked like, what the design was, but it was too quickly moving around for you to really see much detail. Fun to revisit an old well-known location like that and get all those nostalgic references. And just I was gonna say there's just like a mild little bit of character building or a little puzzle piece added, but I really don't think there was in this episode. Nothing really new was given to us about the Mandalorian. So if this did end up being an episode where they are introducing Boba Fett back into the land of the living, that's kind of lame. If an entire episode of this, only, again, I stress the fact that there's only 8 episodes in this series, and they're all fairly short episodes. If there was a whole episode that all was just a long walk for us to introduce possibly Boba Fett, that's a little disappointing, I must say. But yeah, I don't know. I hate being negative, but I feel like this was the least interesting episode so far. So, oh well, what can you do? I have faith still that there's 3 episodes left, and it's probably going to ramp up pretty quickly to finish off those last 3 episodes, because we do have a story arc that has been established, I think, in this season, and we've seen some stuff in the trailers that we haven't seen yet. So that is going to happen eventually, and I think we're going to ramp up to something interesting to finish off this first season. But yeah, kind of a letdown so far with the last couple episodes, in my opinion. So, do you agree with me? Did you see the episode? Did you think it was awesome? I mean, you're totally welcome to disagree with me and tell me how much you disagree with me in the comments down below. Or maybe you do agree with me, and we can give each other thumbs up in the comments down below. Did I miss any details that make it a better episode than I thought it was? You know, I could have missed something. I feel like I didn't. I did watch it twice, but yeah, maybe I'm just in a weird mood today. I don't know. Yeah. Let me know what you thought in the comments down below. As always, I appreciate your likes, and subscribe if you want to continue to hear my thoughts on Star Wars specifically, but also you know, reviews of film and television as I get the time or the availability to see them. So I have been Eric Grooms, the Film Score Fanatic, and I hope you stick around, and I see you next time for the next episode. So I guess I should just finish with like all of the statements currently in Star Wars. May the Force be with you. I have spoken. This is the way. Yeah, I think that's all of them. Bye.